Hi everyone, I'm Eric.
I'm Craig.
And we are Whose Turn. In today's video we're going to be talking about the game Golem. Golem is a 1 to 4 player game. It generally is, it says 2 hours in the box. I would say it's anywhere from like 90 minutes to about 3 depending on the number of players, but it is a little bit unique game. It is very complex. There's a lot of things going on with this, but before I get into it, I'm just going to give you a heads up. We are going to be trying something a little bit different with this video, so if you're looking for a specific part of the video, check in the description box below. We'll have timestamps for what we talk about on the different things, as well as our actual scores at the very end. So if you're looking for that, skip ahead. If you're just kind of looking for what the game entitles for, like mechanics or the theme or anything like that, just go ahead and check the description box below. But with that, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So for Golem, you take place, it's I think the 1400s, 1500s, somewhere around there. There's actually a poem this game is based off of where a rabbi created a golem, a lifeless being, a soulless being. That is the whole idea behind the game, is that you are a sect of Jewish rabbi and you are in control of your golems in ancient Prague. Well, not ancient, 1400s, whatever. You have to have students out on the board controlling the golems. They need to be so close to the golems, otherwise you have to pay knowledge tokens to control the golems. If you lose control of the golems, you lose points. Very bad. More on that a little bit later. As the golems are going around, there are different actions. They are blank at the moment, but there are different actions you can take that when you activate your golem, they do something good and bring in resources. Likewise, there's a lot of passive things going on with the game, both on your actual board and on this main board itself with all the scoring. So keep in mind there's a lot of moving parts of this game overall. Claim to fame for the game is going to be the synagogue itself, where you actually roll marbles based on the number of people that are there and choose your actions as such. You move your students based on the color that you choose, and sometimes you don't move your students at all, and then you perform whatever action the marble itself is on. After choosing that, there are set rabbi actions as well that are a little bit more overpowered that you can choose which one you want, as well as you can then upgrade various parts of your actual board. You can build artifacts, which actually give you more passive income. There are, you can upgrade the golem itself to get more parts.
You can upgrade the golem, you can upgrade your spell book, I think is what it's called.
Yep, you get spells. You can buy, it's not really spells per se, but it's books of knowledge to better understand the golems. You can buy those as well, and you can upgrade them.
You can upgrade the your artifact track, which is essentially a passive. Kind of how the engine building of this game kind of works is in that section of the artifact.
Yep. Yeah, and I would say that the activeness is the spell books by far, and then the controlling the golem just gives you some passive perks. So there's a lot going on in this game. If it sounds like a lot, that's because there is. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the complexity and the time commitment itself of the game. This game is very complex. I don't even know, is it like a 4 on Board Game Geek?
I know it's way up there. I don't know exactly.
I think so. I think it's around.
One of the more complicated games out there.
Yeah, so complexity through the roof. We very much have a lot of moving pieces in this game. The book itself does pretty good most places explaining it. It has a synopsis for some of the books as well as for some of the rabbi actions. It breaks that down really well. The artifacts is a hot mess. I think I read that thing, 4 times? 5 times?
Yeah. I think you read it quite a few times. We're interested in trying to figure out how and when everything kind of activates, and like the order of which things activate when you're kind of taking actions in this. You have to really keep a track of as well. Yeah, if there's any confusion, I definitely recommend checking out the forums, just because the book itself does okay explaining that, but the forums do much better. So keep that in mind, that there will be confusion the first time you're playing if you've not played with an experienced player. With that, your first time through, your first time learning, if you are playing with an experienced player, you will lose. This is very much, the more you play it, the more you understand what's going on. Yes, it's a shampoo game, a rinse, lather, repeat with actions and stuff like that, but there's so many different options that it's never the exact same. It does have, I will be able to beat anybody I am teaching because I know the basic mechanics of the game much better. It's pretty obvious, sometimes there's that, but there is almost no luck involved in this game. So keep that in mind. It can be a little intimidating. Yeah, when he was mentioning the game kind of can change from game to game. It's not always 100%. There is action spots here that you'll be able to activate with your golem, and depending on where your golem is, like further down, obviously it's going to be a lot better action, but there's actually 7 spots here, and there's 10 things, and you'll shuffle and you'll deal them out. There's a number on the bottom corner of each one of those that tell you in which order they're supposed to be on this board.
The other thing is the time commitment. Box is pretty accurate for 2 people. I think it was about an hour and a half. It's 2.5 for the first time, obviously, but about an hour and a half for us on average with 2 people. 4 people, I can only imagine, is 3+. So don't expect to be able to play this in a quick little in between. This is gonna be a time commitment. So keep that in mind when you are playing, especially learning. It will be a little bit of a time sink. So just so you're aware.
Yeah, it's definitely a time sink. There's fairly limited turns. You got 3 in each round times 4 rounds, so you got 3, 6, 9, 12 total actions that you're going to be taking throughout the game. So, and you're going to, like many of the highest complexity games out there, you're going to want to be figuring out what action can I do right now that will be able to have some sort of chain reaction to be able to give me either extra movement or being able to activate your golems, or kind of figure out the best balance of how to kind of play through.
Yeah, yep, hands down. And that kind of brings us into the second part, which is going to be the mechanics of the game itself and kind of what you do with that. As we stated, you take the marbles, which each marble, the colors, yellow, red, and blue. Speaking of which, this is red. This is not green. It should be green, but it's red. It should be green, but it's red. It's confusion.
Brown.
It's bleh. Oh my god, that confused us so hard.
These are all vividly green, and then this is almost like a brown,
or
not
orange.
even red. Or
yeah,
orange.
It's either way. Just yes, this is the red section. You read that right. You are understanding it correctly. The red marble will move your guy up 1 in the red zone. The yellow one will move you up in the yellow, and the blue in the blue. White marbles do absolutely nothing for movement. Black, you can choose 2 different ones in order to do so. You might be asking, well, what does it really matter? You're just kind of choosing whatever it is. There are specific visitors that come to the city, and if you get 2 different eyes, because when you choose your actions, you only get to choose 2, you actually fill in the spots for the golem's eyes. If you match the collectors what they're looking for, you actually get an extra action in between the turn, which can be very overpowered. It is very good to have.
Yeah, it's always really beneficial to try and go for it. Most of the time, the actions they have up here are probably some of the most powerful actions in the game. They're not, like, I don't know necessarily if it's something you 100% have to go for. And obviously when you're playing with 3, 4 players, the rarity that you're going to be able to block a lot more. I think when you get 3, 4 players, it'd be a lot easier to block, where when it's just 2-player game, there's still 2 marbles of each color, and then there's also 3 white marbles, which white are the wild color. They count for any color eye, and black is like a null, so it won't count for any. So if you take the black, move 2 of your guys forward, you're not going to be able to take the visitor action at the end of the match.
Correct, yeah. It is really nice because obviously with how the synagogue is placed, you actually place the marbles in the back and they kind of roll down. It does add some randomization. It is nice to see something other than dice be used. There is a giant flaw with this, and Craig will show this now on screen, with you can stack that. You can stack that in the fact that if you just put it down in one section, you can get all the marbles to show up on one. You can call the player out, you try not to do it, but you don't mean to do it, it just kind of happens. And it's a big flaw. It is a big flaw. I'd almost rather have dice because you can't necessarily stack the dice, so to speak.
It'd be a little harder for you to stack the center, but the edges for activating Golem or the magnifying glass or the mirror, those are relatively easy to load up with a bunch of marbles if you really want to, because you could just drop all the marbles in one spot. There's not really any type of system inside the synagogue itself to kind of like
randomize
or like sort it or move them kind of throughout the thing before it falls. So
yeah, yep. And with that, I mean that's a big problem obviously with the marbles. You also have the Rabbi actions, which some are very overpowered and some are kind of meh. And depending on when they show up can really make or break your game, because there's one that is very overpowered if showed up late, but at the very beginning it's not that great. But it is what it is. It is kind of part of the randomization, just like with all the sections up here for your golem. That's one thing too, is this that there's a lot of randomization with this game. As far as the artifacts go, ultimately with that, they're really nice. Like Craig said it, they're all passive. So all they do is give you passive income the whole time, which is glorious, but they're not going to be a lot of, like, it's really boring to do it. I'm not going to lie. The books are just the wild card. If you cannot get a lot of books, if you cannot get a lot of blue actions, if you cannot get, when you take the marble out of the synagogue, depending on what spot it's in, you do that action. If there is nothing that shows up in blue, you're never doing books. That is my biggest complaint about it, is that as far as mechanics go, that is a very active part of the game. The passive part of the artifacts is sweet, but the active part where you need to be playing the books in order to get the rewards, in order to do anything, it sucks. If you get screwed, you literally can't draw any. You don't get any books. You can't do anything. It ruins the game.
Yeah, and I think thinking about trying to go like heavy books, there's higher you go up in the level of it, you can have up to 5 of one color in each column. But I don't know if I've ever really gotten 5 books out ever. Maybe once or twice we may have gotten like maybe 5 or 6, but it's usually split up between all 4 of the color combos, because spoilers, you need all 4 of the color combos to be able to get the most points out of the blue. So It's not like you get a point for every single card you have. You get the different types of colors you have out.
Yeah, so each column has to have a different color. There's 5 colors. Black is a wild, so it can be done any of them, or it can be its own. However, you cannot stack. So I cannot have a green and a yellow in the same column. It needs to be green and then yellow. You can get all 4 of them opened up, that's fine, but you have to have different columns, and that's your multiplier. Each scoring at the end of it, there's a lot of points that are given out during the game, either passively or actively, but the points, the entire multiplier for the blue is that you need to have different columns, just like all of the multipliers for the golems are building golems. If you build no extra golems, you get a multiplier of 0, so you get no points for red. So just kind of keep that in mind. The scoring at the end, there's a lot going on throughout the game. The end is where you get a lot of bonus points, but I mean, in the few games we played, that really didn't make or break it. It was kind of you're in the lead, you're probably going to get it because it's pretty even, or you're in the lead and you're in the lead for everything else. So
I've noticed in this game, like, while there is some strategies to it, I'm sure, I don't think it's a focus one area type game. Even though you get the most points if you try and focus one area, but you'll also be giving up a ton of points in other areas. So.
Yeah, nope, hands down. You want to try to there's a sweet spot for each of the 3 zones, and you definitely want to hit that. Otherwise, you're going to be blue is the only one I could see you really like running away with it, but even then, it's really it's nothing. I think like 24 is the max for most of them. I don't know. We haven't obviously min-maxed it. We don't really care that much.
No.
So it's just the fact that there are definitely flaws with the scoring part system.
Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, haven't min-maxed it and don't care to. I do believe this is going to be a game that would be really good if you feel like you want to put a lot of time into learning all the intricacies of the game. Like, I have no doubt in my mind, the more you play it, the more likelihood you're going to be the person who ends up winning in this game, because you'll kind of know what's going on. And like many complex games, I also feel like the initial start, it is randomized in this game, because you are dealt out 4 starting tokens and you take 2 of the 4, and that determines where your guy starts, like the resources you start with, and a bunch of other things, which is also unique to this game.
Yeah, yep, and you get to choose 2. So you get dealt 4, but you choose 2 of the 4. So you can literally decide, what do I want to do with this? There's also an objective card at the very end. There's objective cards you're drafted in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't do much. I mean, they're like 2 or 4 points per, and they're kind of difficult to get. So I usually ignore them, and really it's not bit me in the ass yet.
Mm-mm. Yeah, usually I'll try and get... when I first did it, I was confused on how it actually meant, because it shows like, oh, you need your student this like so far up on the board, like a 6 or something, then on the bottom to get like 5 points or whatever it'd be, and on the bottom of the card it shows like plus 2, 3, 4, 5. The first time I was doing this, I was thinking that meant you get him here, you get 4 points, but if you get him further down the track, you'd get additional points for each one, but that ain't how it is. The bonus cards is, if you complete 1 bonus card, you get that, but for every extra bonus card you happen to complete, you're getting the extra bonus points.
That's unique. So there are students so far, there are a number of golems built, there are gold bars, everything like that. There are different variants of it, but everyone that's unique. So if you hit the upgrade, the student, the golems, and let's say that's books, I forget exactly what it was, then you get the maximum of the extra 4. I think it's like an extra 8 points for having 4 different ones.
Okay.
So, but it's very confusing, as we've stated. The rulebook really doesn't do all that well. So.
Yeah.
So the last thing about this game, and this is actually one of the things that makes it a little bit unique, is that as we stated, you obviously have your golem. You have to have your students with it. As your golem continues to go along, if it outruns your student, you have to pay knowledge for every square, the differences between that for each of the 3 spots. This can be a lot of knowledge. You get a lot of knowledge with the game, so it's not like it's a, oh my god, it's not that bad. But if you ever don't pay the knowledge that's different, you lose 5 points. So there are ways around this. There is a Rabbi card that lets you run your golem way up there, and then you have to pay no knowledge for any of them, which is really cool. But it is kind of a cause and effect. You have to. The game also like wants you to bury your golems, which you get points and rewards for doing so. So if they get too far ahead, there's really not too many places to get them back. So you pretty much have to destroy them, start over, and then run them up the street again. So just keep that in mind. That is kind of what we're talking about with the knowledge and the students and the golems running around everywhere. So
yeah. One of the other things with this, like he was mentioning, is killing off your golems to get some of the one-time activations. There's other like cards, action abilities that come out, and other things that give you victory points and other things from the amount you've actually killed off and are in the graveyard. So it has some benefit to it, but honestly, I don't see any reason why you'd want to kill off a golem unless he's screaming in front of your student. Because if your student is way up and you have a golem in the back, I don't really see a reason to want to kill him, because the abilities that they have when you activate them are so significant in this game.
yes, but to counter that, sometimes you don't have a choice. Because the more golems you have, the more power you have. That's what it dictates. It's a power gauge. You have to move that many steps. So if you only have 2 golems and you have to move 5 steps, the very last 3 spots, you either lose victory points or extra knowledge just for your golem taking those steps. So if they, not so much even just running away from your student, but if they get too far out there, you might want to kill them. It does make sense. There is strategic advantages to killing your golems to make new ones. So just keep that in mind. That is something. You did play the one game where you only had the 2 golems the whole time. And they stayed within, like, you were able to keep control of both of them because you're like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, there was one time when I went super heavy. I think it was
Gold
blue. I don't even know my green or my
green.
Red. The red guy was somewhere. I wasn't even really paying attention to him at that point because I honestly wasn't upgrading the golems. I wasn't building golems. I was completely and utterly ignoring golems and just building out my artifacts and getting as much spell books as I possibly could.
Yeah, yep. And I think you won that game, but I think it was still close. That was one of the ones we were still learning. Either way, there are viable strategies for all of it. So keep that in mind. The mechanics, the complexity, all that stuff, it really wraps in nice in the fact that there's a lot of ways to play this game. All right, up next in our review is going to be the theme of the game overall. As we've mentioned, it obviously has a somewhat religious theme. It does kind of have that whole, it's based off that Jewish poem about the Golem, which is in their synagogues, that's, your rabbis, everything like that. So it's a very heavy religious theme, so to speak, at least in the background. It doesn't like shove it down your throat, but that's how your multipliers come out, is by how many menorahs you have. So it does kind of have that theme overall. It's the 1400s. There's not much besides the fact that, it's the board and the actual golem itself, which is a very hideous looking thing. It's not pretty. But otherwise, that's about it. I'm not really a big fan of this theme in general.
I'm kind of up in the air on it. I don't really, like he was saying, it doesn't really shove like the religious aspect down your throat in this one. Like, I mostly didn't even I understand that it kind of has the 2 and 2 because it's got like the religious star for the bonus points, and it's got the menorahs for like
multipliers.
The multipliers.
Yeah.
So, and Rabbi and whatnot. So obviously I know it's there, but besides those 3 things on this, if they didn't have those, if they changed those 3 things and separated it slightly from that, I don't think it would really affect the game at all.
If you were completely completely cut off from the world, you had no idea about the Jewish religion whatsoever, you wouldn't even know this was a Jewish religious game. And it just has themes for that. It doesn't sprout anything. It doesn't do anything. It is literally based off that poem, which is why it's got all those things. So it's not one of my favorites. I like other ones. I hate to sound like every other person, but like steampunk is kind of one of my favorites in general. Any kind of version with that. I don't even really want to say fantasy, but just not this.
Yeah.
Not a fan of this one.
Yeah. Like you were saying, some of my more favorite ones are like Greek mythology, steampunk, fantasy with like dwarves and dragons and stuff like that. But I don't mind Golem. I think they could have done this idea with essentially Frankenstein instead of this thing, and
would have been the same.
It would have been the same. It
Yeah.
wouldn't have been any different.
And it could have been, but as that is the theme of the game. So just a heads up there is that it does have it is a very apparent Jewish theme to it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm pretty sure when I got it, I wasn't even thinking of that. I didn't even really look at it too closely. I was more or less looking at the
gameplay
mechanisms and the complexity of the game and kind of how it played out.
Ooh,
yeah, and that's what made me buy it. I don't typically buy games strictly on how it looks, like the artwork and the how colorful it is, or how good, like the theme itself. Like, it's not a selling point for me necessarily.
Yeah, and I wouldn't not buy this game based on like everything I know about it, but it's as simple as it's just one of those things to be aware of. Mm-hmm. So, all right, up next we're going to be talking about what really makes this game unique, and we've kind of touched on all of the things that do make it unique, but now we're going to kind of go in a little bit more, just kind of reiterate again the dice. I was about to say the dice. I did say the dice. The marbles in the synagogue and the rolling, how your actions are chosen. I think that is probably one of the more unique things I've ever seen in a game. And yes, you can stack it, and yes, it does suck because it's still randomized, but it is very unique in how they do that.
Yeah, and like he was saying with the synagogue, sure you can kind of forcibly have things roll on one side over the other. Like if you put your hand and let the marbles go out on one side rather than another, you can kind of load it in one spot or the other. It's kind of a concept of the game. I don't know if necessarily the turn order specifies who's necessarily supposed to be loading the dice, because maybe that has something to do with it too.
He said dice. Just like I said dice. I'm not the only one.
Marbles. Like, if the last player who's in turn order is the one that gets to decide how to drop the marbles in there, maybe it is kind of supposed to be able to allow you to set it up. Because if you're last to go, maybe you can drop them in a certain spot and kind of load it yourself.
I don't know.
It's kind of a douchey move if you know you're last to go. And you're like, well, I know I need a lot of gold. I'm just going to drop them all right here. So there's like 7 things of gold right in the middle.
And, I mean, really, like, us knowing that, I think that it's... You just don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't do it.
You just gotta, like... Wee.
Yes, you can. You just don't do it. It's just like with playing other games like the Quacks. You can... hold it underneath and look down and see what you're grabbing, but you don't. You know what I mean? Like it's sportsmanship. It's Scout's honor. It is what it is. It's playing fair, and that's just you just don't do that. But could it happen? Yeah. I'm not arguing there.
Yeah.
So, and if I see it happen next time we play, I'm definitely calling you out on it.
Yeah, wasn't there.
Oh, look at that. Looks like we're activating some golems this time. Oh, Craig wants to activate his 6 golems on the board? Imagine that. The other thing I would say about this that is unique is literally the golem-student relationship. Like, there is no other game. There are other games that have tracks. There are other games where you move your workers around spots and you have them sit there and you get passes from it. But no one really has, that I know of anyway, that... hey, you have to control one with the other. And the golem in general is very unique about the game in that you have to kill them sometimes, and you can make more, and you kind of choose where you want them to be, but that dynamic is probably the most, like, besides obviously the marble rolling, the most unique part of the game.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the middle section of the board here is the most unique section of this game where you're trying to, like, keep up with the golems, which we mentioned before. There's cards that will come up here and they'll have like extra numbers in the top right corner that will tell you, oh, by the way, you add an additional 1 or 3 extra steps to all your golems, and the more golems you have out, generally the more steps that you're going to have to take. But keep in mind that when you have 3 or 4 golems, especially if you get 4 golems out and you haven't killed one, you're gonna have to move your golem between the 3 like 9 steps sometimes. So
yeah,
they're gonna outpace your workers because your workers really only move forward from picking out the marbles and a rare occasion of activating your golems or maybe getting a spell card underneath or something. But
that, or you're just taking the black marble every time it comes up. But that is a whole other thing entirely. But yeah, it is what it is for that, and I agree. So, as far as like the spells go and the stacking and the artifact, all that stuff that I've seen in games before,
books,
they're all in other games, so nothing unique there.
Upgrading and doing like the engine S part with the artifacts, that's fairly common in most games.
Yeah,
so.
it is probably just those 2 things that really kind of stand out to make this game what it is.
Yeah, definitely is what makes this game more unique.
Last section of this is just going to be kind of what this game kind of is categorized as. We've mentioned a lot of things in this, and I would have to say, hands down, I would give this in a very high complexity engine builder, for sure, in that category, just because there is a lot of moving parts. The further you move along with your students, the more passes you get, the more artifacts you build, the more passes you get. You're building your engine, you're getting all these resources every single turn. Yeah, you only have a couple of turns to do it, but that's what makes the engine, that's what makes a good engine builder, is that you literally build it 1, 2, and then 3, 4, you're capitalizing on everything you just did.
Yeah, it has some worker placement or type, like worker action selection type. I don't know exactly how you'd really want to like determine the spot in which really it's just the golems. Your students are essentially just passive income, because depending on where they're at on the board, you'll gain 1 or possibly 2 resources plus additional victory points each income phase. Otherwise, it's mostly your golems that are going to be out on the field, and that's like the action, like worker placement, action selection type aspect of the game.
I would agree. It's probably like a worker placement light. Where it's like you don't have complete control over where the workers go. You do for your Rabbi, but other than that, you don't have complete control over the rest of the stuff goes. So I would say worker placement light.
Yeah. Like there's going to obviously be instances where like, oh, I get 5 movement, so worker placement would be like, okay, I want to get here, so I need to move 4, so which other golem am I going to end up having to move one space?
Yeah. Well, and you also have to keep that in
So
mind.
that's essentially the only worker placement-ish in this game.
Yep. So yeah, I would say it's a light, and there is aspects of that. I would say there is obviously resource management because you're always getting resources and everything like that, as well as action selection because you're choosing what action you want to do for everything. So I mean that's about it. There's not really any cards, like there's objectives at the end. There's end scoring, I guess. There's multipliers for that. But a lot of the stuff, that's about it. Really.
Yeah. The action selection is essentially the synagogue, in my opinion, because you have the 6 lanes? 5 lanes that you're choosing from, so...
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what I'd classify it as, if that makes sense. So it's a pretty broad one overall, and I know, like, overly complex isn't really a category, but I don't really know what else to call it besides overly complex.
A heavy game.
It's a heavy-hitting game. So that's our review for Golem. We're going to give our personal opinions on it as far as where it ranks as a number, everything like that. So I'll start us off. I'm going to give this game an 8.2. I respect anything that's overly complex. The engine building is one of my favorites. I don't really like some aspects of it. There are definitely flaws with this game, but overall, I enjoy it. Am I going to be like, yes, let's play this every single time? No, I'm going to be like, hey, let's play this like once or twice a year and, you know, really get it out there and everything like that. I will always be willing to play it. I will only mention it the 1 or 2 times, but I'm always going to be willing to play this one at the table. If you like this one, if you find this one interesting, I would definitely recommend Cooper Island. Cooper Island is very similar to how complex this game is and how limited you are for your actions. There you're fighting for every point, whereas here you're giving them it passively every single turn. So it is different there. But that one too has the same thing of you need to think every single step and every single action and every single thing needs to do it because you only have so many turns. So if you like Cooper Island, definitely check out Golem. If you like Golem or if you were interested in Golem, Cooper Island's another one that's very similar to this. And I shouldn't say very similar, but is similar to this game.
For my score, I would say it's probably like a 7.5. It's not one of my favorite heavier games that I've played so far. There's quite a few other games, and that could just be that I haven't 100% grasped how exactly you are to like set yourself up in this game, because it's very much a set yourself up for success or failure right out of the gate. As for like games that I could kind of consider it's kind of like, it's kind of, in my opinion, fairly unique enough to where I myself haven't played many games that I would say are really close to this. Yes, there is games out there that have limited turns, and you're going to have to try and make the most out of each turn, but I haven't myself played many with the marble action selection. I know there's a few of them, and it does have some randomness to that because you're looking for certain marbles in certain spots, but I do enjoy this game. I don't know if it's one I would go out of my way to try and play, but if people wanted to play it, I would definitely not be opposed to playing the game, that's for sure.
That's our review of the game. Let us know what you think of the game. Leave it in the comments down below. Do you enjoy it? Did you do well your first time? Did you understand everything? What did you do wrong? Please tell me it was the artifacts, because that would make me feel a lot better. I would really appreciate that. But seriously, let us know what you think of the game. If you're interested in anything like that, if you agree with what we say, or if you disagree with what we say, we don't care. Just leave it in the comments down below. Just start a conversation. That's more than enough. If you like the video, go ahead and give it a like. If you enjoy board game content, like reviews and how to play in setups, other stuff like that, just talking about them, consider subscribing. That's kind of what we do. We're really big enthusiasts of the hobby, so would really appreciate you checking us out for that. Otherwise, that's about all I got. So, thank you all for watching. I've been Eric.
I'm Craig.
And we are Whose Turn?